Hello guys, my name is Marianne Guevara and I like reading books and talking about them. Hello to any new subscribers, and as you can tell from the title, today I'll be discussing my favorite books of 2020. I've come across a lot of new favorites this year and I can't wait to talk about them, so let's get started. So number 9 is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. We're following Earth after it has been pretty much devastated after a nuclear Third World War, which left the Earth irradiated. And the majority of humanity died from the radiation, but the population that is left, the majority of them have left to live in outworld colonies. When you go off-world to live in the colonies, you are given an android as a servant, but there are some androids who have defected and have fled to Earth, basically, to live amongst or blend within the human populace. And we're following a man named Rick Deckard, who is a bounty hunter for the LAPD, and his job is to retire these androids, basically. What I particularly like about this book was that Philip K. Dick was able to portray this atmosphere, this image of not a dying Earth, but a dead one that is just slowly decaying, and portraying a humanity that is just so stunted after the event of this Third World War that they spend their lives trying to find fulfillment in this desolate wasteland of a planet. And of course, we have the whole, topic of what makes a human when we introduce the android bit, because empathy is often used as a factor that differs, or what makes us different from androids. But then he portrays, a population that has to use empathy boxes or things to artificially stimulate empathy. I thought this was really clever. There are a lot of twists and turns that really got to me when I first read it. So I thought this was a fantastic read. Number 8 would be Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. So this book takes place during pre-war England, so around the 20s and 30s. And we're basically following a young man named Charles Ryder who gets introduced and befriends a man named Sebastian Flight, and how he ends up being introduced to Sebastian's family, a very wealthy, elite Catholic family. I think it's hard to explain my feelings. Evelyn Waugh was a Catholic, so there was a lot of Catholic themes or concepts that were explored here. And me being a Catholic as well, I felt like I was able to resonate with some of those themes. So maybe that adds to my personal experience of the book. But you don't have to be Catholic or believer to appreciate or love this novel, because ultimately what this book is, or what this book accomplishes, what Evelyn Waugh accomplishes, is brilliantly portraying sort of like the sunny days of one's youth with all the humor and frivolity of it, but then also portraying the solemnity or the somberness that accompanies adulthood. And on top of that, he also portrays a very realistic disillusion of relationships, of bonds, and also the strong emotions that are still left behind even when those bonds are broken. So number 7 is The Memory of Babel, and I already have a book haul and a wrap-up where I discuss in depth about this book and the overall series that it's a part of. Memory of Babel was my most anticipated read of this year, and it did not disappoint. I really loved it. I really loved how we got some more detail into the overarching plot. And one thing that I can say about not only The Memory of Babel, but the series in general, what I really like about it is that our main character, Ophelia, I know she differs quite a bit from regular YA fantasy protagonists. I feel like there's a substantial amount of time devoted to her reflecting on herself. And because of this, we really do get a sense of how she has changed or progressed over time. And I feel like you don't really have those type of moments in YA fantasy, and I really appreciate that the author gives it here. But that's like one of the few things I really love about this book. It's just fantastic. Number 6 is Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. This takes place in a far future where humanity, because it has made certain decisions for the sake of its comfort and its ease, has pretty much lived a stunted life at the moment. Robots basically just take care of everyone. no one knows how to read anymore. They pop pills whenever they feel disgruntled or upset. And this is basically a book about rediscovering humanity and how reading or literacy is empowering. And not only empowering, it can help us connect with our humanness, our humanity, and our raw emotions as well. This is just a heartwarming novel. And there's a lot of sci-fi out there that is bleak, but I feel like with Mockingbird, there's just a much more positive, hopeful atmosphere to it. So yeah. So number 5 for the year 2020 is Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. And this story revolves around this small town and around a young woman named Molly Gibson. And basically her life, her growing up in this small community and her relationship with her father, and how things start to change when her father remarries and she ends up getting a new stepmom and a new stepsister. I really adored this novel, and the main reason is because of Molly Gibson and how it's a thick book, Wives and Daughters. It really is. But it gives you a lot of time to understand Molly, to see her grow up, to see her relationships, and then get invested in her and her relationships. And I really couldn't help but just fall in love with her because she's such a sweet lamb of a character. It's a great book with how not only we are introduced to Molly and seeing her grow up and see the type of person she ends up being, but seeing also the relationships of the town and how they intersect with her own family. I loved it. I loved it very much. That's why it's number 5. Number 4, I guess, is Tess of the Derbyfields by Thomas Hardy. Now, this follows a young woman named Tess Derbyfield whose life gets changed when her father discovers that their family happens to be descendant from a very ancient and noble lineage known as the Derbyfields. And he also discovers that they have rich relatives. So Tess's mother and father kind of goad her to pay a visit to their rich relatives, to help out the poor relations. And she ends up meeting a man, her cousin, Alec, and there's an incident that occurs that kind of just scars her for life, basically, that negatively impacts her. Yeah, Tess was pretty hard to get through because it is a very tragic tale. And because he does portray Tess as a woman who was just mistreated or not treated fairly by society at the time. And the main reason why I love this book so much happens to be of Tess. And it's not for any special reason. It's not because, she's not special like Lizzie Bennet or Jane Eyre, but I really admire this very innate human quality of her where she keeps on getting beaten down over and over again. And many times it's not her fault, but this sort of inner strength that she picks herself up and kind of just pushes forward in order to find some peace or solace down the road. And I just really connected with that human part of the story. Tess of the Derbyfields became a favorite book of mine. Not just a classic, but book. So the next book is The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. And similar to Tess of the Derbyfields and the next book I'm going to talk about, I really love this due to the main character, Lily Bart. So this book takes place within the Gilded Age of American society. So we're following the upper crust of New York high society life. And Lily Bart was born into this social circle. However, due to her family losing the money, she's pretty much impoverished. So she's an impoverished socialite, basically. And she's trying to gain a permanent foothold within this society that she was born into and that she believes she belongs in. And the only way to do that, especially for a woman, is to get married. So this whole book is basically Lily trying to toe the line between trying to enjoy the finer things that this part of society, offers to her, but then also trying to retain some sort of freedom without having to, marry. This is a case where this one and the next book I'm about to talk about, where the main character at face value, you can easily peg as, just a horrible character. Oh, she's vain. Oh, she's spoiled, that sort of thing. And to be fair, she is. She is materialistic. Lily loves the finer things that, the upper crust society of New York does offer to her. But she's not going to gain it at the expense of another person. And that I can really admire because you can tell because of this trait of hers, she's not meant to be part of this world. Because if you're going to be part of, the upper elite, you're gonna have to be manipulative. You're gonna have to backstab. But Lily doesn't have it in her. There's an innate goodness to this character, and I really love the way that Warren portrays it. And this is a fantastically crafted novel. And the ending. I'm not gonna lie, when an item is introduced into the story, I was like, oh no. But I don't know, the way it played out, I think it's sad, it's very bittersweet, but Warren made it work. So yeah, looking forward to reading more from her. Number 2 is The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. So basically, The Mayor of Casterbridge follows a man named Michael Henchard, and in a fit of drunken rage, he ends up selling his wife and baby girl at a fair to a complete stranger. When he wakes up the next morning, he is immediately distraught at what he had done and promises that he is not going to drink, a drop of alcohol for like this amount of years. Later on, as time goes by, he ends up journeying to a town of Casterbridge and ends up becoming the mayor, a very respected man of the town. But pretty soon, his past mistakes catch up to him and it leads to his eventual downfall. What I loved about this is the main character of Michael Henchard. And I really, similar to Lily, this is the type of person who you could just say at face value is just a horrible man, gets what he deserves. But ultimately, Hardy portrays a very complex person. And I think a very relatable one, because Michael Henchard, unlike Tess, who is pretty much a victim of society, Michael is very much a victim of his own faults. He has glaring faults. He's hot-tempered. He's stubborn. Like, the man can fly into a fit of rage and threaten to fight someone, if he gets mad enough. But then also, he's a man of his word. He's a man who desires to better himself, even though he may not know how to do so. And also what I really like about him is that he acknowledges whatever, bad thing falls upon him. He acknowledges it's his fault. He does not blame anyone else. It's my fault and my fault alone, and I'm going to see to it that I'm going to answer for it. I thought this was a fantastic character study and a great Hardy. This is my 3rd Hardy book, and I loved it. Another 5 stars. And now for number 1, that would have to be Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Basically, if you're unfamiliar with the story, we're following a man named Charlie Gordon who has the IQ of 68, a very low IQ, and because of this, he is considered the butt of jokes to many people. But however, he happens to have a very voracious desire to learn, and because of this, he ends up being chosen for an experiment which is meant to increase the intelligence or the IQ of the human being. It was a well-done portrayal of a man who suddenly has to get accustomed to this intelligence, this increased intelligence, but also grow up so fast. And in addition to that, also deal with the memories that he's slowly regaining. And through these memories, we see how, he was mistreated, all because of his mental state, his low mental state. This book has a really strong message of, humanity, respecting another person's humanity, regardless of whether or not they're smart or they're, not so smart or basically like that. Because as Charlie, mentions in the book, he was a human being before the experiment. He was, that he deserved the same amount of respect he would have even if he was smart. So this was just a beautiful novel, and I'm not gonna lie, I cried at the end. When I finished the last page, I cried. And it's such a great reminder of, how do we treat other people. And yeah, it's my favorite novel of the year, and I understand why it's so highly recommended by a lot of people, regardless if you're, a fan of science fiction. So, yeah, Flowers for Algernon, please read it. So those were all my favorite books of the year 2020. I would love to hear what your favorite books were in this year. And yeah, thanks for stopping by and watching. And if you liked what you see here, if you like the content that I'm making on this channel, please feel free to like and even subscribe. So yeah, once again, thanks for stopping by.